Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How y'all doing? Well, today I'm back in my kitchen again. And so, starting out this morning, I had to get my coffee going. So now what I'm drinking, it's not a perk coffee because Miss V can't handle the caffeine. So I'm drinking some Taster's Choice coffee with a little swig of this hazelnut in there and some natural bliss. It is so delicious. This has real milk and cream in it. This tastes really great. Taste it, guys. Okay, so today what I'm going to do, I got all my stuff out here because I'm going to make a cake. It's a cake recipe that I perfected for myself, and I call it the Drunken Rum Cake. It was a rum cake, then Drunken Rum Cake, because I put a lot of rum in the cake and in the glaze. So now what I'm going to be using in this cake, I have my flour here, 3 cups of all-purpose flour. And I have my sugar here. So now the rum that I'm going to be using is Bacardi. Now this big bottle of Bacardi lasts a long time because I've cooked a lot of rum cakes. But this is really great in my rum cake. And sometimes if I can't find that, I like the dark rum too. And also what I'm going to be using in my cake is buttermilk. I'm going to use 1 cup of buttermilk. And I'm going to use 6 eggs. Now when you put your eggs in your cake, you put them in one at a time. And you only beat it long enough that the yellow disappears. You don't just keep beating the cake over and over. Especially a pound cake or any rum cake like that, because your bread will get tough and rubbery. So you don't want to overbeat it. The only time you beat a cake for a long time is when you are creaming your butter and your sugar together. Okay, let's get with it. And also I have 3 sticks of butter already in my bowl. And that's something that this cake doesn't call for, but I usually always put a little bit in all of my cakes. I always add a little bit of Crisco. It's just something about that Crisco really make a cake really moist, because you know a true pound cake is heavy, because they usually, you know, back in the day when they really made a pound cake, it was a pound of sugar, a pound of butter. You know, everything was measured by the pound. It was a true pound cake. So now along with this, let me pour here. Go ahead and pour some in here. Now I don't even measure this Crisco. I put it in with my butter. I'm sure it's probably less than 1/4 of a cup. Probably more like a tablespoonful. Just a dab. You see? Got that going. And all my recipes, I try to keep them all together right here on my iPad. I'm going to start adding the sugar. 3 cups of sugar. sides. Now this is a KitchenAid that I have here. But I'm going to tell you, I love KitchenAid products. However, KitchenAid, they're not making things the way they used to. For one thing, this bowl here, and no matter which paddle you use to mix your cake or whatever, it never gets down into this bottom part of this bowl good. You have to always make sure that your cake is really made well and mixed well in there. Now, I had a Sunbeam mixer. I never had that problem because that Sunbeam mixer didn't have this funnel like at the bottom of this bowl. I like the KitchenAid products, but their that bowl seemed to have changed. Okay. Lock that bowl. Okay. You're creaming this butter and sugar together. You can cream it probably about 5-6 minutes. But you don't ever beat the rest of the cake that long because it'll cause your cake to come out a little tough. The butter that I use, you can use salted butter or unsalted if that's all you have is the unsalted. But, excuse me, if that's all you have is the salted. But unsalted butter is better to use because the salt causes things to be a little tough and salt dries things out. So just remember that if you're going to use salted butter, it tends to dry things out a little quicker. So if you want your cake to maybe you're not going to eat it up within a few days, you might want to think about not using salted butter. And also I see a lot of young folks when they're cooking, they're using margarine where their recipe is calling for butter. I just want you to know that there's a big difference in margarine and butter. And if you do your recipe and you use that butter when it's called for, you're going to see a big difference in the taste of your recipe. Because when you use margarine, that's just like using Crisco, pretty much. But butter, it's more pure and natural. It's creamier and everything. It's a natural product. And it's healthier than the butter. Than the margarine. Okay, I'm going to start adding my eggs. And I'm going to add my eggs one at a time. Remember, you just want it to beat long enough where the yellow disappears. If you're not real familiar with pouring your eggs into your batter, it might be a good thing if you crack one egg at a time and put it in there. how you have to keep going around, getting your batter off the side of the bowl. That's what this KitchenAid. With sunbeam mixers, I don't have to do that. So if you guys need to buy a mixer and you see a good sunbeam with the stand and everything, feel free to get it because it's a good mixer. And I tell you, you're going to save a few $100s on it too. Because when you get something, you want to get what you paid for. Now I'm going to heat my oven to 325. Now to this, we're going to start adding our sour cream, our rum, and we're going to start out with the flour. We're going to end with the flour. So you want to start with something dry and end with something dry, which will be your flour. Also in this cake, I'm going to use rum extract, not flavor, rum extract. And I'm going to use almond extract. There's a big difference in extract and flavoring too. So that's what you want to use. You want to use your rum extract and your almond extract. Okay, so with my rum, I'm going to use a teaspoonful of my rum extract. Okay, that was the almond extract, and I'm going to use a teaspoon of the rum extract. I put in a teaspoon of rum extract and a teaspoon of the almond extract. Now when I get ready to make my glaze, I'll be using this rum again, the rum extract. Now also in this cake, I'm going to put rum in here. It calls for 1/4 of a cup. So now I'm going to add my flour before I start adding my buttermilk. Now with this cake, you can use buttermilk, a cupful, or you can use a cupful of sour cream. One thing, when you're putting the flour in these mixers, if you don't put it in there right, honey, it will kick that flour right back in your face. Me and my granddaughter was in here cooking a cake one day, and I tell you, I had a mess to clean up. But it was funny, though. Half of my buttermilk in there. Finish this crumb. glass, a little bit of this flour in. One-fourth cup of rum, 3 cups of all-purpose flour, a half teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of almond and rum extract. And then for the rum glaze, you're going to need a stick of pure butter. You're going to need 1/4 of a cup of water, 1 cup of sugar, and you're going to use 1/2 cup of rum. Now usually what I do, I take out about a tablespoon. Once I put that 1/4 cup in the container, I take out about a tablespoon of that water, and I just mix that sugar, butter, and eggs with that, and then I add that tablespoon of rum. Instead of that just being 1/2 cup of rum, I put in 1/2 cup of rum and an extra tablespoonful. And then when my cake is, when it first come out of the oven, while it's still in the pan, I punch holes all over it. I punch holes all over the cake, and I have my rum like in a little container like this, and I pour it all over that cake. That's straight rum. Now I do that time I take it out of the oven, because see, that cake is still, when it's coming out of the oven, it's still hot and it's still cooking. So if you pour this over that cake after that cake cool, your cake is going to get soggy. Okay, you don't want that soggy cake. Sometimes rum cakes will get a little moist at the top when you flip it anyway because of the rum, but you don't want it just totally wet. But when you take it out of that oven, punch holes all over that cake with a toothpick. Take you about 1/4 cup of rum and pour all over the top of that cake, all into those little holes. Okay? So now I'm going to get my pan. Oh, hold on. So this is the pan that I'm going to be using. It's a 12-cup pan. And I usually spray my pan with Baker's Joy. Okay, so now I have the dark brown Domino sugar and walnuts. What I'm going to do, these walnuts are a little too big, so I'm going to chop them up a little, and then I'm going to mix a little bit of brown sugar, maybe about 1/4 of a cup of walnuts. But in that area, you can mix the amount that you want. You know, I'm going to mix a little bit of walnuts and maybe about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and I'm going to crumble that in the bottom of my pan. It's already greased. Make sure it's greased well, because those nuts will stick to the bottom of the pan. And when I put that in the bottom of my pan, then I'm going to add my batter. And when you flip that cake, when it's done, you're going to have those walnuts and that glaze from that brown sugar, which is going to be amazing. That taste, you know what it's going to do. It's going to make your tongue slap your brains out. That's what it's going to do. Okay. Not a whole lot of walnuts. Yeah, that's probably about a little over 1/4 of a cup, maybe 1/2 a cup. You don't have to pop them up too much. But these just a little big. Especially when you got little folks eating it. I'm not gonna measure. You see, this is a pretty big size spoon. It's not a serving spoon, but it's a good tablespoon. About 2 spoonfuls in it. Use a fork to kind of stir it up, because that fork will get that brown sugar kind of loosen up. And mashing it, not getting it, use the teeth of your fork. Okay, so now I'm going to put this in the bottom of my pan. Now I'm going to put my batter on top of that. Put my batter right on top of that brown sugar and those walnuts. You can use whatever kind of nuts you desire. Or you don't have to put any nuts on it at all, because some people are allergic to nuts. Okay, so now when you get that batter in that pan, kind of twist it around and bump it on the counter. Get that air out of your cake. Okay, that's all ready for the oven. Push that down. Okay, so now we're gonna just put this right on in this oven. We got the oven on 325. I'll put it in the center right. Okay. I'll check it in maybe about 50 minutes. Because it'll take from 50 minutes to an hour and 5 minutes to bake usually. But I'll check it again. Okay, so the cake is ready. It's time for it to come out of the oven. It's been in the oven for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Some cakes may vary. Now, I'm going to take a toothpick and insert it in the cake. Okay, so you see nothing comes up. Now, if you insert the toothpick in the cake and batter come up on your toothpick, you know that your cake isn't done. Okay, so now this is the main time when I want to put my rum on my cake. When I first bring it out of the oven. Now I have a toothpick, but I found that that's not big enough for me. This is a toothpick. I don't know what you call it. I call it like a little skewer. But it's those are the things that come in the little pack where you can have the little thing where you can crack your nuts, your pecans, and you can use this to dig the meat out. Well, I use this to punch holes all over my cake. You can use a toothpick if you like, but this goes all the way to the bottom. And this is 1/4 of a cup. Pour that all over my cake. You want to do this with a cake when it first comes out of that oven. See, I'm doing more than a floor. But don't wait and let the cake cool and do this. It's too late then. Okay. So now I'm going to let this cake sit in this pan for about 10-12 minutes. Usually that's long enough to leave a cake sitting in a pan, because if you leave your cake sitting in your pan longer than 10 or 12 minutes, that cake is going to be very hard to come out of that pan. Sometimes it'll really get stuck to the pan and it'll cause your cake to tear up. So you don't want that to happen. That's not going to be good. Okay, so we're going to let that sit for 10 minutes before I take it out. Cake is all done. I'm going to flip it out. I have my cake carrier. That's what I usually store my cake in. Put it on top. Get a firm grip on this, on the top of it. Hold on to that cake carrier. And then go up under the bottom and just flip it over. Yeah. There you go. So those nuts, that brown sugar. That's a good extra touch to this rum cake. Okay, I'm just gonna let this sit here while I go over to the stove, and then I'm gonna make that glaze to pour over this cake. So here I have 1/2 cup of butter. I'll put it in my pan. Okay, so we're gonna melt this butter. You don't have to melt it completely before you add your water. And I have here a cup of sugar. And we're going to use 1/2 cup of water. And I don't have it quite full out of 1/2 cup because I know I want to add extra rum. So I probably got it about right here. About 1/4 of an inch from the top. Okay. So now I have my 1/2 cup of water in here and my 1/2 cup of pure butter, not margarine. And I'm going to add 1 cup of sugar. And stir this as you add it in. And you're going to bring this to a boil. And when it starts to boil, you want to boil it for about 5 minutes. Okay, so you're bringing it to a boil for 5 minutes. Your glaze. Be careful because it'll boil over. And when you stir, always hit the bottom of that pan. Because you know that sugar is easy to burn. Okay, so we're still letting this glaze cook. It's been about 5 minutes. So I'm going to turn the stove off and take this off the burner. Because if I leave it on the burner, it'll continue to cook. See that? So now it's right about time for me to add that rum. Okay, so the sauce is finished cooking. So now I'm going to add my rum. Okay, and it called for 1/4 of a cup. A 1/2 cup of water, I took out 1/4 of that water. So that's 1/4 of a cup of rum. I'm going to put like a tablespoon more in there. And you remember all that rum I poured all over it when I took it out of the oven. And the cake is still warm. And that's what we want. We're going to pour that glaze all over that warm cake. Spooning over there. Let it drizzle down the sides. I have cut this recipe in half for this glaze because to me it's always too much glaze. It smells so good. That butter and that rum smells amazing. And you already know what it's going to make your tongue do. What? That's it. It's going to make your tongue slap your brains out. There's quite a bit left, but I think that's enough. Now, sitting here in the middle of this cake is about 1/4 of a cup, maybe a little less, that's sitting there. But the cake is going to absorb it, because you know when you make a rum cake, it have a little moisture in it, but that moisture be so good with that rum. So you're going to enjoy that part. So I'm just going to let it sit out here on the counter for a little bit to finish cooling. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video with my drunken rum cake. And like always, everything I've done in this kitchen today, all of this was in Miss V's opinion. And I'll see you the next time in my next video. Bye-bye.